examples of sales leaders that you respect and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think any founder that is like really taking the feedback to heart on that initial product market fit, where you're doing founder selling, I think that's probably the hardest kind of selling you can do, right? Because there's a gray area between what the product does and what you want the product to do, and oftentimes you're selling and then building. But I think that's ultimately where the magic happens. That's why founders know the problem so well. So I think any founder who is like, really doing the selling and doing the hands-on customer development, I think that's the first thing I admire. I've learned a lot from folks like you and Adam Aarons, who, took Okta from, sub $1 million all the way through IPO. I remember grabbing breakfast with Adam the day he announced that he was leaving Okta, to see people build loyalty like that and scale organizations like you and him has done. That's incredibly impressive. And then, Peter Bell, someone I see as a mentor who was in a sales role at EMC with you, had him come in and talk to the company relatively often about, what does it mean to be in sales and listening to customer feedback, and then how you just need your first, however many customers really love what you're doing to be along for the ride as you think about where you take the product. So I think, I've learned a lot from a bunch of different sales leaders. John Turner, someone who I worked with on the board of Think Together, that was at Chronicle for a while and had taken TriNet public. So I feel like I have a good kind of group of sales folks, go-to-market folks, bunch of different business models, bunch of different spaces. But the connective tissue is always that it comes down to like, prioritizing the customer and then the team that you can put around you, and finding people who can really care and put their ego aside. So I feel very fortunate there that I got a good group of folks that I've learned from. Yeah.
And do you have a point of view on, I'll say, go-to-market type founders, like say you and I would be, versus kind of engineering only go-to-market founders who would be kind of less kind of sales centric?
Yeah, I mean, there's there, right, where it's like, everyone thinks they can market, and then like folks that, can't build the product, they're not designers. David, the CEO of Flatfile, likes to joke with me, about ability to lead design and help Flatfile with design, because it, clearly you either have the skill set or you don't. So I think there's every technology first company needs a product, and I think that's typically the skill set of the founders. I think the ones that have, a founder around the table who knows how to think about, strategy, ops, go to market, they tend to be able to have every part of that conversation be represented the fastest. But I also think there's something to be said about the feedback loop with like strictly technical founders that know how to kind of see each other's strengths and then just trust what, maybe others are getting for observations. So I think I still believe in, kind of founding teams of two where there's that perfect balance between, tech and business. But I do think the overlap there is in product. And, I used to be a lot closer to making product decisions, but everything you think about in a technology company needs to be kind of product centric. And I think that allows you to get the right, product strategy right. That allows you to build the go-to-market in support of the product strategy. So it ultimately comes back to like, the skill set of the technical team. And I view that as kind of the talent in a lot of these businesses.
Awesome. Really cool here. And then you've been talking a lot about the mentors and some great folks, but what about any specific feedback that you've received?
Yeah.
And it could be in different stages, right? So, now as a, investor, different than maybe kind of when you're an operator.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it. I think in coming up through the ranks as an operator, before I was a founder, you really want to become kind of indispensable to the team and company that you're working with. And a lot of that is like trying to see problems before they become issues for the business and ultimately not requiring much management, right? I think that's the best place to be as a startup operator is, quick one-on-one, you're prioritizing the right way, you're solving problems. And it's almost like the team runs in the background without creating any additional work for the folks that are kind of up the management layer. I think as a founder and CEO, everything falls on you as a CEO. There's no problem in the business that you can say you don't know about. You can't say someone else owns that. Like at the end of the day, like it's, it's kind of your baby. And I think that's overwhelming, and startups do take over your life, like Paul Graham says. So I've certainly felt that. And now as an investor, I think it's easy to talk yourself out of opportunities because there is something that's not yet figured out, or, you're not being a follower if you come in early because maybe there's not like a, top tier investor already involved that, you can intellectually say is smarter than you, or they have more resources to help the company be successful. So I think it's sometimes hard juggling the different types of feedback. Mentors, any good mentor, yourself included, gives very clear feedback very often, probably more often than you want the feedback. So I've gotten a lot of it. Some of it's challenging to swallow, but I think also being mindful of like what's your next hill to climb in life or professionally. That it's been really helpful for me and eye-opening, and just got to do the work on trying to figure those things out before they become big issues in your life or your business.
Yeah, for sure. So then what about advice you'd give your younger self?
Probably something in patience. My wife would joke about that. I'm probably not the most patient person. And I think it, felt like it took me, forever to get to the point where I was the founder of a business. And then there were even things there where, I probably went too fast and, could have done a number of things differently. So I think, thinking very deliberately about relationships and opportunities. You always think you're going to have kind of your next opportunity, or there's more relationships that you can get introduced to. So I've tried to, now be much more relationship focused, much more patient. And it's tough to balance that with kind of the founder DNA where, it keeps you up at night if there's a problem that you feel like you can solve. So I see that in a lot of folks that I work with now, early stage founders, really hard charging. But they also need to be mindful of kind of the bigger picture and the folks that they're working with along the way. So it's hard to give yourself feedback because I'm hoping that I took a lot of it, but I still think a lot of those thoughts every day around, kind of patience and relationships.
Yeah, that's great. And just as a reminder for those watching or listening, feel free to chime in with any comments or any questions. Nick Candito here with Angel Collective Opportunity Fund. Definitely lots of fantastic insights. So what about the kind of importance now of what you see as kind of sales ops or rev ops and that function that I know you know a lot about?
Yeah, so I kind of came up through the ranks in, sales ops, implementing things like Salesforce and doing the reporting and like running the forecast meetings and, eventually tying that into like how we're doing product planning. So I would say as soon as you get past that initial product market fit phase, critically important. I think it's critical for those functions to be embedded in the line of business. You can typically, I've seen one example of it in my career where someone can do ops across entire go-to-market, marketing, sales, post-sales, but typically you need kind of your ops folks to be thinking through the strategy, what you're measuring, how you're optimizing. You need those folks to like be tied to the management and the feedback cycles within folks that are doing those individual jobs. So I think there's a lot of exciting tools there now. There's never been an easier way to stay informed if you're leading a team, things like Gong where you can jump in calls and listen insights and, put it on 2 or 3X just to kind of go like, hear what's coming from the field. It just gives you a really unique ability, I think, to kind of tie in ops to every conversation and reinforce the way that you're building teams and running the company. So excited about the innovation there and hope there's more of it, right? Because I think there's so much that can be measured. It's important for leaders to kind of know what they're measuring, what they're reinforcing, and then how do you share that information out across the team?
Wow, that's awesome. So then that ties into SalesBricks and the whole CPQ space. So maybe talk more about them.
So it's just very hard to buy software. I have probably examples every week where, there's a product, you want, you've used it at another company and, you can't go buy it until you talk to sales and you get like opaque pricing. And then they send you like, a longer than needed contract document. So I think a lot of these consumption-based, value-based businesses, they really need like a kind of a revenue automation engine, like what SalesBricks is building. And I think every company that has a large customer base, you probably need this for renewals as much as you need it for net new sales, where, pricing changes, there's a bunch of new product capabilities you want folks to have access to. So I think just the ability to kind of, put more information in the hands of the customer, do that in a way that's kind of data driven and selective to their use case and how they've currently leveraged the product, I think it's a big up and coming category. And I would say SalesBricks was probably the first one that I saw, leader based on where they're at in the market. But for every CRO, why make it hard for your customers to go, purchase and then implement your product? The sales cycle should not be something that gets in their way. And I think SalesBricks is an opportunity to fix that.
Yeah. And they're focused kind of only on the software space, not hardware, correct?
That's right. Yep. That's right. And one of the easier ways to think about it than I initially thought was, a company like Lever that took over your jobs page on your website. Like, think about SalesBricks taking over your pricing page, but it's a different pricing page for every customer based on, who they are, where they are, what they want to do, especially if you have a trial experience within the product. So there's really a lot they can do to kind of drive innovation that I think will make the buying process feel a lot more catered to anyone who's looking to make a purchase, and they know which solutions that they want to be working with based on who's leading in a category or referrals, reviews like G2 Crowd. I just think buyers are more informed than they've ever been.
Yeah, much. They, obviously, I think a fact now, again, versus what it used to be is, buyers come into the sales process and sales cycle already probably with the ball in the 50-yard line with kind of what their point of view is, which is, far different.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I think on the enterprise side too, to tie it back to the topic, you're not going to close a 7-figure deal with any company today if they don't have a chance to evaluate and touch and feel the product.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of folks get lost, right? Is like there's a product piece to every sales motion, regardless of the size of the deal. So I think clearly, if you're closing a large enterprise deal, they want to talk to someone, they want to see you do some work. They're going to send a bunch of like troubleshooting and implementation work your way. That's just the nature of how those folks buy. But yeah, everything today is, it's the quality of the product, it's the magnitude of the problem that you're solving, and I think folks just need to, really do the product market fit work and then figure out what's kind of optimized for their business. But it's a maturation process for every company versus something that falls very cleanly into, one bucket or the other. And that was kind of the thinking on a topic like this today, because I think there's a lot of confusing feedback for founders that makes it harder for them to get their company off the ground.
Absolutely. It's interesting. So it's config, price, quote is CPQ, but if you think about the process, it should be config, quote, price.
That's right.
So it's kind of interesting that what this space is called. So what about any predictions for the sales tech stack space?
I think, there's probably going to be more data-driven products. I think this idea of usage-based, consumption-based businesses, that's probably something that's here to stay. It's tied to your value point. So I think there's the opportunity to see, best-in-class products somewhat replicated, different functional roles. I think these products will still continue to need to integrate to core systems like the HubSpots and Salesforces of the world. But I think there's probably this wave of, more tools, not less, functional-based buying decisions, and then just additional data. But the struggle that I think a lot of companies have is like how to tie that into your core ops and how you're running the team, because it's just hard for teams to know how to prioritize with so many tools in place. So being that kind of single pane of glass to figure out what each function is responsible for, how they need to prioritize, and then the inputs of data for them to be able to do that. I've made a number of decisions along those lines where I think there's just more to come in that regard to empower go-to-market teams.
Awesome. Yeah, certainly be interesting. I mean, you think back 10 years ago, I mean, you're lucky if you could have, Salesforce and LinkedIn, and then now there's, hundreds, thousands of the, tools out there. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure it's, ripe for consolidation as well.
That's right. Hopefully. And I think there will be some big winners in the space as well.
Awesome. So what about any PG Randy stories?
Yeah, I mean, the probably the best story from you over the summer was when we were hanging out doing lunch, I think after seeing one of your son's baseball games. Someone came over and asked if I was your son. I took that as a great compliment. I was going to tell people I went to Harvard, played baseball at Alabama. So it's been funny to kind of have the opportunity to learn from you while I was, deep in the weeds at Relate IQ. And I know you put a lot of folks in there, Frank Goldman and Kelly Singh Sank, and then have a chance to kind of build a relationship and have you support some of the things that I'm doing, co-invest in companies like SalesBricks and Product Signals. I think, to tie it back to the relationship point, I've appreciated the coaching and the guidance and the friendship. And hopefully there's a lot more to do together. So there's plenty of stories I couldn't share too. We've had some good Go Team nights, but it's all just tied to the fact that none of this stuff is easy. Customers want you to solve their problem, and it's kind of incredible the amount of complexity that can get introduced when you have team challenges, market challenges, product challenges. But that's ultimately why I think company building and entrepreneurship is so rewarding, is because there's nothing in your life you'll do that's more challenging or more rewarding. And I've been fortunate to work with a number of founders that are going to be far more successful as founders and CEOs than I've ever been. So that's the cool part of the job.
All right. So I'm old enough to be your daddy.
No, well, we corrected that to whoever asked, but I took it as a compliment. Hopefully you.
That's honored.
Sounds like you did it,
honored.
But you could have.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have you. He's one of my kids for sure. So
appreciate it.
All right. Well, time flies here when you're having fun. You've been fantastic. Really appreciate it. Great topics meandering around the companies and how you invest and advice, feedback, and everything else. So thanks so much. So next week we have, same time on Wednesday, Stu Gold, who is the CRO of Blattner Technologies. And he also has a great background. So for those that have watched, thank you so much. Tucker posts this across all the different social medias. Thanks to SalesBricks for sponsoring. For those that are not members of Sales Community, go check it out. And most importantly, Nick, thanks for your time.